Good day everyone. Today we will discuss about the measurement and scaling which is under chapter 5 and we are the third group and I am their leader Joana Marie A. Alundan. So before we go and dive in this chapter, let me discuss about the chapter summary. This chapter will introduce the concept of measurement and scaling. It will also provide discussion on the primary scales of measurement and go on to classify and describe both comparative and non-comparative scaling techniques. It will also discuss how an appropriate scaling technique be chosen in developing a right question. It will also focus on the concept of validity and reliability in details. So the first topic under this chapter is the importance of measurement and scaling in marketing research. Like sampling, we use measurement regularly in our daily lives. Let's say for example, if someone asks you your favorite newspaper, your mind may create a list and you shall decide your favorite most newspaper from that. While deciding on that favorite newspaper, your mind would have used several criteria such as your reading pattern, content on the newspaper, various other features such as the writers involved, format, color, and picture used, and columnist you prefer. Furthermore, your mind would have also told you the most preferred, the second most preferred, and even the least preferred newspaper. So here we will talk about the measurement. So what do we mean by measurement? It is the criteria your mind is using in deciding the favorite newspaper like what we have said in our example. So in research terms, measurement is nothing but the assignment of numbers or other symbols to characteristics of objects according to certain pre-specified rules. The idea of assigning numbers can be helpful in two ways in accurate understanding of a phenomenon. So number one, it allows statistical testing. And number two, it helps facilitate easier communication as people have a clear idea with regard to what is where and what is to what. Scaling can be defined as an extension to the process of measurement. On the other hand, to successfully measure a phenomenon, the researcher must gather appropriate raw data. Now let us proceed to the scales of measurement, the fundamental properties. So there are four scaling properties that a researcher can use in developing scales. So number one, we have the assignment property. It is also referred as the description or the category property. Number two, we have the order property. When we say order property, it is the second measurement scale property which refers to the relative magnitude between the descriptors. Number three is the distance property. The distance property refers to a measurement scheme where exact difference between each of the descriptor is expressed in absolute. And last but not the least is the origin property. The origin property is a measurement scheme wherein exists a unique starting point in a set of scale points.
Good day everyone, I am Majaila M. Cuevas and I am going to discuss the comparative and non-comparative scaling up to the selecting an appropriate scale.
5.5 Comparative and Non-Comparative Scaling. Researchers have identified several important characteristics for developing high-quality scales. First is understanding the defined problem. Second is establishing detailed data requirements. Third is identifying and developing the constructs. And last is understanding the complete measurement scale. The above stated key features can assist marketing researchers in developing a reliable and valid scale. This stimuli results in a specific set of reaction, and researchers are mostly given tasks to measure and interpret the reaction prior to it occurs. At ang mga managers ay interesado sa kung ano ang consumers' attitudes, beliefs, preference nila, as well as competitive reaction among important market phenomena. When we say market phenomena, it means things that happen in marketing. Ang mga halimbawa nito ay product launch, sales increase, advertising campaign, a price increase, or reduction. Now, we are going to discuss how researchers can take on the task of measurement using various scaling techniques. The scaling techniques regularly employed in marketing research can be classified into two basic strands. First is comparative scaling and non-comparative scaling. Comparative scaling involves direct comparison of stimulus objects with one another. Isang halimbawa nito ay yung mga managers na inaalam yung consumer preference regarding sa brand nila tapos i-compare sa brand ng competitor nila. Yung tanong na alin sa dalawang brand ang mas prefer ng consumer ay makakapagbigay din ng malinaw na impormasyon para sa mga managers at researchers. And there are several techniques which are used in building comparative scales such as paired comparison, rank order, constant, sum scale, and Q-sort. Makikita naman yon sa figure 5.1. Kung ang comparative ginagamit para sa pagkukumpara, the non-comparative scaling involves each stimulus object being scaled independently of the other objects in the stimulus set. The resulting data in non-comparative scale are assumed to be interval or ratio scaled. Dito, imbes na direct comparison na i-rate ng consumer yung dalawang brands, dito sa non-comparative scaling technique naman, continuous and rating scale as well as itemized rating scales. The itemized rating scales are further subdivided into Likert scale, semantic differential scale, and staple scale na makikita natin sa figure 5.1 ulit. Sa madaling salita, ang non-comparative scaling ay madalas ginagamit sa mga marketing research. Next is 5.6, comparative scaling techniques. As what I have discussed earlier, comparative scaling techniques provide a direct comparison between stimulus objects. Dito, walang choice ang consumer kung hindi mamili sa isa sa dalawang pagpipilian o maaaring higit pa sa dalawang pagpipilian. Ang isa sa mga advantage ng comparative scaling ay madaling gawin ng mga researchers at mabilis naman sagutin ng mga respondents. However, as the data gathered using this technique is mostly ordinal, it lacks distance and origin properties and therefore does not provide possibility of carrying out various advanced statistical techniques. 5.6.1 Paired comparison scaling. In paired comparison scaling, respondents are asked to choose one among two alternatives on a selected criterion. Ang halimbawa naman nito ay papipiliin ang respondent sa dalawang sikat na brand ng toothpaste ayon sa kanilang quality. And a comparison scaling can still be useful technique to compare various stimuli. Let's say na may researchers na gustong malaman yung consumer preference sa tatlong magkakaibang brand ng toothpaste. At sa pamamagitan ng paired comparison, makakagawa ng tatlong tanong yung researcher. First is the preference between toothpaste brand A and brand B. Yung pangalawa, preference between toothpaste brand B and brand C. Yung pangatlo naman, preference between toothpaste brand A and brand C. Kung dun sa unang tanong, pinili ng respondents ang brand A kaysa sa brand B, at sa pangalawa naman, pinili niya yung brand B kaysa sa brand C, masasabi natin na mas preferred ng consumer ang brand A kaysa sa brand B. Sa madaling salita, ang paired comparison scaling researcher ay nagpapakita ng resultang rank order. Ang paired comparison scaling ay madalas ginagamit sa pricing decisions at sa mga product testing. Maraming food companies at iba pang fast-moving consumer goods or FMCG ang gumagamit ng teknik na to para ikumpara ang kanilang existing product sa upcoming variant o sa product ng competitor. However, when large number of stimuli is involved, paired comparison scaling becomes a prestigious technique. Next is 5.6.2, rank order scaling. Rank order scaling, as the name suggests, is about ranking a specific set of stimuli on a predefined criterion. It's also quite popular among researchers when trying to understand a specific rank order among various stimuli. Dito, ang mga respondents ay inaasahan na mag-rank mula sa pinaka-prepared nila hanggang sa hindi nila masyadong prepared. This scaling technique also uses comparison between stimuli objects using a predetermined criterion. While there are disadvantages of using rank order scaling, the ease of understanding is the greatest advantage associated with rank order scaling. Sa technique na ito, madaling mauunawaan ng mga respondents ang gagawin at sa kanilang ranking makikita natin kung ano yung life shopping environment nila at yung choice process ng isang respondents. 5.6.3 Constant sum scaling. In constant sum scaling, respondents are asked to assign a constant sum of units, could include points, currency, and so on, to a specific set of stimulus object with respect to some predefined criterion. Para mas madaling maunawaan, tingnan natin yung table 5.1. Yung table 5.1 ay isang halimbawa ng constant sum scaling na nagpapakita ng naging preference o ng reference ng respondents regarding various predefined criteria, namely content, quality, meron din supplements, writers involved, image used, local, regional, and advertisements. Constant sum scale can also help segment various respondents according to their preference and provide groupings. And constant sum scales can be helpful when measuring consumer shopping basket preference, tulad ng kung magkano gagastusin nila sa specific food items, such as how much would they spend on each specific food items. At sa pamamagitan ng internet ngayon, yung constant sum scales have become easier to implement because software used in the background can keep track to the total and inform the respondents of the changes required. Next is 5.6.4 Q-sort. Q-sort can be called an extension to rank order scaling. It uses rank order procedure in which objects are sorted into piles based on similarity with respect to some predefined criteria. It provides grouping according to the respondent's preference among relatively larger number of objects quickly. Ang halimbawa nito ay yung respondents ay binigyan ng 70 statement na nagpapakita ng magkakaibang preference. Inaasahan silang i-range yung mga statements na yon mula sa pinaka-preferred nila up to the least preferred. And this kind of sorting provides how respondents group variables in their minds. Next is 5.7, the non-comparative scaling. Respondents answering non-comparative scale-based questions do not compare the object being weighted either to another object or to some specified standard. The non-comparative scaling, they evaluate only one object at a time. Non-comparative scaling involves two techniques, namely continuous and itemized rating scales. Itemized scales are further divided in Likert, semantic differential, and staple scale. 5.7.1 Continuous rating scale. Continuous rating scale is also known as graphic rating scale, in which respondents rate the objects by placing a mark at the appropriate position on a line that runs from one extreme criterion to the other. Dito naman binibigyang kalayaan yung mga respondents sa pamimili at hindi lang basta yung ranking. Yung example naman itong continuous rating scale, makikita natin sa table 5.2. Itong scale naman na to, maraming nabibigay na helpful information sa researcher kasi hindi lang ranking yung focus niya. Next is 5.7.2 Itemized Rating Scale. Itemized rating scales involve selection of a specific category out of various categories predefined by the researcher. Sa bawat category naman dito may brief description at yung mga respondents ay inaasahang pumili ng pinaka-fit sa isang category. Itemized scales are widely used in marketing research. Likert, semantic differential, and staple scale are among the most used itemized rating scale, and we shall describe them in details in this section. Next is 5.7.2.1 The Likert Scale. This Likert scale is one of the highly used scales in marketing research which focuses on degree of agree or disagreement. This scale is named after Francis Likert who developed the scale. Dito naman sa scale na to, yung mga respondents sasagot kung agree ba siya o hindi sa nakalagay na statement. Ito yung kadalasan nating nakikita na may nakalagay na strongly disagree to strongly agree. Likert scale has several advantages including ease of development and understanding. It can be administered using any survey method. Dahil nga agreement or disagreement ito, medyo matagal sagutan kasi babasahin at mag-a-analyze ka. 5.7.2.2 Semantic Differential Scale. Semantic differential scale includes a 7-point bipolar scale in comparison to Likert's 5-point scale. Diba sa Likert scale, puro strongly disagree to strongly agree. Tas may nilalagay na number tulad nung nasa example niya. Samantalang sa semantic naman, yung endpoints are clearly defined tulad ng nasa example ng semantic. Yung example ng semantic, yung nakalagay sa figure 5.4. Dito, pwede rin gamitin yung satisfaction and dissatisfaction sa endpoints at dito madaling makita yung perception pattern ng isang respondents. One of the advantages of semantic differential scale is improved design wherein negative and positive aspects related to a stimuli object can be interchanged on the right and left side. Dito sa scale na to, naiiwasan magkaroon ng bias. At itong semantic scale nakakatulong din sa pagkukumpara ng mga product o pwede ring brands. Next is 5.7.2.3 The Staple Scale. Staple scale consists of a single criterion in the middle of an even number range of values from -5 to +5 without a neutral point. The scale is generally presented vertically. The respondents are asked to choose a specific number describing the stimuli object of concern on the predefined criterion. Yung figure 5.5 naman yung example nitong staple scale. Para mas madaling maintindihan dahil para sa akin hindi siya madalas ginagamit at wala pa akong nasasagutan tulad ng ganitong scale. Tingnan natin yung figure 5.5 na example niya. Makikita natin na yung category ay nasa gitna tas may -5 up to +5. At tulad nga ng napansin ko, itong staple scale ay hindi ganong ginagamit sa field ng marketing research. Sa pag-aakalang mahihirapan at malilito agad yung mga respondents at may possibility din na makapag-provide sila ng biased response. And the last part of my report is 5.8, Selecting an Appropriate Scale of. Over the years, researchers have developed many scales of measurements and many modifications have been suggested and used. As stated in the discussion above, the scales can take many different forms and therefore it becomes at most important for researchers to take several important decisions while constructing these scales. Those decisions mostly pertains to length of scale points, balance of the scale, forced versus non-forced scale, and last is scale description and presentation. Sa length of scale points, Length of scale points has a direct impact on respondent engagement. The longer the scale, the higher the confusion. Pero syempre, pag longer yung scale, mas informative. Di rin nagtagal, nag-suggest din yung mga researchers na mag-set na lang ng appropriate length anywhere between 5 to 9 scale points. Next is the balance of scale. And in most cases, researchers developed balanced scale wherein favorable and unfavorable categories are equal. However, sometimes unbalanced scales are also used. Researchers must take extra precautions in analyzing unbalanced scales. Next is forced versus non-forced scales. Dito sa forced versus non-forced scales, yung forced scale choice naman mahalaga sa mga researchers, lalo na kapag ang sasagutan ng mga respondents ay isang sensitive issues. Kasi kapag sensitive issues, respondents tend to stay neutral, lagi lang silang nasa neutral ground. And researcher may not be able to capture the real response kapag yun yung mga sinagot nila pag neutral lang. At sa mga ganong sitwasyon, mas nakakatulong yung pagtanggal ng neutral point para makikita mo talaga kung saan nakapanig yung respondents. And the last is skill description and presentation. The skill description in words and the presentation may also deter respondents' engagement, and therefore, extra care must be taken in developing appropriate skill. And that's my report. Now, let's hear for the next reporter. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I'm Maricar Dula and I'll be discussing about the final topic in measurement and scaling, which is scale evaluation, including the questionnaire design. Okay, so for the last topic in measurement and scaling, we have scale evaluation. While researchers strive to create a reliable and appropriate scale to measure a particular phenomenon, error in measurement can occur due to very many reasons. Researchers have identified various sources of error in measurement. These include, first, respondent error. This error is about the test score, which could be influenced by respondent characteristics such as intelligence and education. Next on the list, we have short-term personal factors such as fatigue, stress, and anxiety. Next one, we have situational factors. These are the noise in the surroundings and the presence of other people. Next, clarity errors, such as poor framing of question or scale that could cause confusion to the respondents. Next, we have mechanical errors. These are the poor printing, recording error, and poor design. Second to the last, we have interviewer error. These are the differences in interviewers and their biases in interviewing. Finally, analysis error. These are the inappropriate methods of analysis used. The errors mentioned above may have an impact on the actual results reported. Errors are divided into two categories, which is systematic error and random error. Systematic error affects the measurement constantly, while random error, as the name suggests, is random in nature. Now let's take a look at this framework. The scale evaluation classification. To avoid such errors and control the research process, after developing an appropriate scale, researcher must assess the scale on three dynamic constructs, which is validity, reliability, and generalizability. I'll go into more detail about it later. First, let's focus at the framework. Validity can be measured by examining content, criterion, and construct validity. Construct validity is divided into three parts, namely convergent, discriminant, and homological validity. Now take a look at the right part of the framework. As you can see, we have reliability and generalizability. Reliability can be assessed by examining test or retest reliability, alternative forms reliability, and internal consistency reliability. Let's now proceed to validity. So what do we mean by validity? Validity is defined as the extent to which differences in observed scale scores reflect the true differences among objects and the characteristics being measured. In other words, by determining the scale's validity, researchers may determine whether the scale is measuring what it is supposed to measure. And a perfectly valid scale will have no measurement errors. Under validity, we have content validity. As the name suggests, content validity or face validity, as it is called some other times, refers to the content of the scale. It entails a subjective yet systematic evaluation of the content's suitability for the task at hand. Researchers and the other experts in the field are sometimes requested to examine the scale and say their opinions on whether it accurately measures the phenomenon. Next, we have criterion validity. It refers to examining whether the measurement scale performs as expected in relation to other variables selected as meaningful criteria. In simple words, it measures how well one measure predicts the outcome of another. Lastly, we have construct validity. It is the bridge between theory and the scale. It explains what the scale is measuring and what conclusions can be made about the theory that underlying the scale. Construct validity is classified into three parts, namely, first on the list we have convergent. The term convergent validity refers to how well a scale's measurement correlates with other scale measurements. Next one, we have discriminant. It refers to the fact that the scale under investigation has no significant correlation with other constructs that are operationalized as being different. Finally, we have nomological. It allows researchers to evaluate how well one particular construct theoretically networks with other established constructs that are related yet different. Now let's proceed to reliability. Reliability in research relates to consistency of results over a period of time. A scale is said to be reliable if it produces consistent results when repeated measurements are made. Systematic errors do not have an effect on reliability, however, random errors do. There are three ways in which reliability is measured. First, we have test-retest reliability. As the name suggests, same respondents are administered identical sets of scale items at two different times, usually 2 to 4 weeks. The degree of similarity between the measurements, measured through correlation between both measurements, determines the reliability. The higher the correlation between the two measurements, the higher the scale reliability. Next is alternative forms reliability. In measuring alternative forms reliability, two equivalent forms of the scale are constructed, and then the same respondents are measured at two different times. Finally, we have internal consistency reliability. It is used to assess the reliability of a summated scale, where several items are summated to form a total score. To put it another way, each scale item must measure a portion of what the scale was designed to measure. We are now in the last part of this topic, the generalizability. What exactly do we mean by that? Generalizability refers to the extent to which one can generalize from observations at hand to a universe of generalizations. To better understand it, let's have an example. For instance, a researcher might want to apply a scale design for personal interviews to other data collection methods like mall intercept and telephone interviews. Similarly, one would want to generalize from a sample of observers to a universe of observers, from a sample of times of measurement to the universe of times of measurement, from a sample of times to the universe of items and so on, to generalize to other universes, generalizability theory procedures must be employed. Now let's move on to the next topic, the questionnaire design. Once researchers decided on a specific research design and sampling procedure and determine the measurement and scaling method, they can now develop a questionnaire to collect the data needed for the study. In this chapter, we will focus on the questionnaire design and development. To begin, we'll go over the importance of questionnaire design in marketing research. Next, we shall describe the steps involved in questionnaire design and several guidelines for developing an appropriate questionnaire based on question structure, layout, and wording. The chapter will also discuss the importance of pilot testing. Under questionnaire design, we have significance of questionnaire building. The ability of a researcher to develop an appropriate measurement scale does not guarantee that relevant data will be obtained automatically. As a result, a researcher's and manager's understanding of what goes into creating a questionnaire is critical. Much of the primary data collection necessary to solve marketing problems involves asking respondent questions and collecting responses. Most problems in the field of marketing research are complex in the nature and require primary data collection. In such cases, a questionnaire becomes a potent tool for collecting primary data. What do we mean by questionnaire? A questionnaire is a formalized set of questions involving one or more measurement scales designed to collect specified primary data. Measurement scales discussed in the previous chapter provide the building blocks for questionnaire design regardless of the form of administration. A questionnaire is characterized by two main objectives. First, it must convert the information required by managers in a format of questions. This objective presents a tough challenge to researchers in converting management dilemma into a researchable questionnaire which respondents will be willing to answer. The second objective is the question asked must be created in a format in which respondent will understand it and be willing to answer them. This objective requires the researcher to create a questionnaire in a format that encourages and motivates respondents to participate in the interviewing process. Incomplete interviews seldom provide useful information, thus the researcher should make every effort to reduce respondent disengagement as much as possible. In most cases, a well-designed questionnaire will solve the problem of disengagement. The researcher must also keep track of the numerous errors that arise as a result of the process, such as respondent, and researcher errors, as discussed earlier in Chapter 3. That ends my report. Now it's time to hear from the next reporter.
Hello everyone, my name is Shania Eumague, and today I will be reporting about process of questionnaire design until survey fieldwork and data collection.
Process of questionnaire design. So, process of questionnaire design is always the issue of debate in marketing research because some thinks that it is an art based on the experience of the researcher, but some also thinks that it is a science based on the sound theoretical development. But while the debate is still ongoing, both sides are agreeing that the process of questionnaire design involves some established rules of logic, objectivity, and systematic procedures. So there is the generic structure in developing questionnaire. The first thing is a specification of the information needed in researchable format. So in this area, you have to look at the research objective and hypothesis. Why? Kasi, syempre, di ba, yung mga gagawin mong tanong, yung mga magiging sagot doon, ay dapat match doon sa research objective and hypothesis ng ginagawa nyong research. Second, dapat you have the clear idea of target population and sample. Kailangan alam mo na kung saan nakatira yung mga taong tatanungin mo, kung nasaan silang age bracket, babae ba, kasal ba, ganon. Then third, you should know that the characteristics of your respondents have a great influence on questionnaire design. Dito, kailangan mong i-take note yung mga characteristics ng respondents mo. Kasi there are some questions na hindi mo pwedeng itanong sa elderly or some questions naman na hindi kayang sagutin. Next is the selection of interview method. So, in this part, mamimili ka na kung anong method yung gagawin mo sa pag-interview mo. So, there are 4. Those are the personal interview, mail, telephone, and internet-based. So, sa personal interview, yun lang yung part where you can ask lengthy and complex questions kasi magkaharap naman kayo. Kung may tanong man yung ini-interview mo, kung may hindi siya naiintindihan, masasagot mo agad. Next is telephone. So, although magkausap kayo sa phone, you need to make your questions short, to the point, but with a little bit of complexity. Kasi, masasagot mo pa rin naman yung mga tanong niya kasi nga magkausap kayo. Next is sa mail. So, sa mail, kailangan mo na talagang gawin na simple, maikli yung question mo. Kasi sasagutin lang yun mag-isa ng yung ini-interview mo. So, you need to make it easy for her. Sa internet-based, para lang din siyang sa mail. You need to keep it simple kasi mag-isa lang din sasagutin yun nung ini-interview mo. Next is the determination of question composition. So, in here, you have to determine what kind of questions are you going to ask to your respondents. So, there are 2 major types of question structure. The first one is unstructured questions or open-ended questions. In here, respondents are asked to answer the questions in their own words. So, they are free to express their true opinions, true attitude towards the questions. Pero may disadvantage, bias. Bias hindi lang because na nasasagot ng respondents in her true opinion or true attitude yung mga questions, but because the way the interviewer interpret the response. So, pwedeng mali kasi yung pagkaka-interpret ng interviewer dun sa mga sagot ng respondents. The second one is the structured or close-ended question. So, in here, it allows the respondents to answer in predefined format, meaning nakokontrol nung interviewer yung flow ng question and answer nila. There are 3 types of question in structured questions. The first one is the dichotomous. Sa dichotomous, meron ka lang 2 alternatives, yes or no, male or female, married or single. Sa multiple choice, parang pinarami lang siyang dichotomous, mas marami kang alternatives and you can choose more than one. The last one is the scale questions. This is the most common na nakikita natin sa mga questionnaire. Ito yung mga range, yung 1 to 5 as 1 is the lowest and 5 is the highest. Next is determination of individual question content. So be clear in the choice of words which can easily be understood in the correct manner by the respondent. So every respondents, they have different things or different ways on how they interpret things. So there are steps to avoid misunderstanding. First one is to use ordinary words which can easily be understood by respondents. Second is avoid ambiguous word. When we say ambiguous, ito yung mga words na may ibang meaning. Third is avoid leading question. Fourth, avoid implicit questions. Next, avoid generalizations. And lastly, avoid double-barreled questions. Interviewer should also understand the problem of memory loss. The problem of memory loss is like don't ask questions like what did you eat on Wednesday 2 weeks ago kasi most respondents hindi na nila matatandaan yun. Next is developing question order, form, and layout. So, yung questionnaire mo dapat maayos yung presentation, maayos yung pagkakasunod-sunod ng mga questions. So, the questionnaire is divided into 3 main parts: the forward and opening question, the generic information questions, and the specific information questions. In forward and opening question, that is the best part where you can make your respondents comfortable and trust you kasi para lang siyang open-ended question where you are asking questions and you are allowing them to answer their true opinion or thoughts dun sa questions. Next is the generic information questions na more about dun sa respondents mo. It is divided into two main area, which is the classification information question and identification information question. In classification information questions, doon masasagot yung mga tanong about socioeconomic and demographic like age, gender, income, family status. Meanwhile, sa identification information question, yun yung mga more personal questions like name, address, and contact number. Please do take note that it is better to classification information question first before identification information questions kasi may mga respondents na ayaw ipagsabi yung mga personal information nila kasi that's their right. Lastly is the specific information questions. So in here, ito na talaga yung mga questions na directly makakasagot dun sa objectives and aim ng research mo. Lastly is the pilot testing the questionnaire. So pilot testing provides testing of all aspects of a questionnaire including content, word, form, and layout. So it is a must to test your questionnaire sa much smaller sample. Pero yung sample na yon is kailangan similar dun sa mga respondents na gagamitin mo sa actual survey mo. Sa pilot testing, you need to do the initial personal interview pilot test. So, kung may makikita kang mali doon, syempre babaguhin mo. Tapos, after mo ma-change yung mali na nakita mo doon sa initial personal interview pilot test, you're going to do the mail, telephone, or internet-based pilot test. And then, yung result nun are need to be coded and analyzed. We are now on Chapter 7, Data Preparation and Preliminary Data Analysis. Chapter Summary, we are going to focus on fieldwork and data collection process, editing and coding procedures, how to code the data, input the data and clean the data, preliminary data analysis, and preliminary data analysis techniques. Survey, fieldwork, and data collection. So as stated before, many marketing research problems requires collection of primary data, and survey are one of the most employed technique for collection of primary data. Primary data in the field of marketing research requires fieldwork. In the field of marketing research, primary data are rarely collected by the people who actually design the research. It is either collected by the people who's in the research department or the department is specializing fieldwork. Meaning they need to recruit field workers who's going to collect the primary data for them. Process of data collection can be defined in 4 stages. First one is the selection of field workers. So in selecting a field worker, you must select a field worker that will be suitable on that particular study. This is important in personal and telephone interview kasi kailangan maging komportable nung respondent sa field worker na na-recruit mo. Next is train the field workers. So you should train your field workers and let them know the aim of the study. So there are guidelines for field worker in asking a question. 1. Be thoroughly familiar with the questionnaire. 2. Ask the questions in the order in which they appear in the questionnaire. 3. Use the exact wording given in the questionnaire. 4. Read each question slowly. 5. Repeat questions that are not understood. 6. Ask every applicable questions. And 7. Follow instruction and skip patterns, probing carefully. Another thing that the field worker needs to know is the probing techniques. Probing techniques helps in motivating the respondent and helps on a specific issue. Here are some probing techniques. 1. Repeating the question. 2. Repeating the respondent's reply. 3. Boosting or reassuring the respondents. 4. Eliciting clarification. 5. Using a pause or silent probe. And 6. Using objective or neutral questions or comments. The field worker should also know how to record responses and interview politely. Next is supervision of field workers. So it is important to remember that the field workers are being paid per hour or per daily basis and yung sahod nila is minimum wage. So yung motivation nila in conducting a survey is not as high sa researcher who's overlooking the whole process. Dahil doon pumasok yung supervision. Because of supervision, the researchers can keep control over the field workers and make sure that they're doing the procedure and techniques na napag-aralan nila during training. The supervision of field workers provides advantages in terms of facilitating quality and control, keeping a tab on ethical standards employed in the field, and control over cheating. Lastly, evaluating fieldwork and the field workers. So it is important to evaluate the fieldwork and the field worker to check the authenticity of the interviews conducted. The researcher can call 10 to 20% respondents to inquire kung nag-conduct ba talaga ng survey yung field worker sa kanila. They could also ask several questions within the questionnaire to reconfirm the authenticity of their answers. The field workers should be evaluated based on the total cost incurred, response rates, quality of interviewing, and the data. Thank you very much.
Good day, everyone. For the continuation of our report, I am Liezel B, and I will discuss the nature and scope of data preparation up to hypothesis testing. So I hope you are all listening. Thank you. So the first topic is the nature and scope of data preparation. So once the data is collected, researchers' attention turns to data analysis. If the project has been organized and carried out correctly, the analysis planning is already done using the pilot test data. Once the final data has been captured, researchers cannot start analyzing them straight away. So there are steps we must know generally involve data editing, encoding, and then data entry and data cleaning. So those are the steps to help in creating a data which is for analysis. So the first one is the editing. We all know that editing is the usual step in data preparation. It is to edit the raw data collected through the questionnaire. Editing detects errors and omissions, correct them where possible, and certifies that minimum data quality standards have been achieved. The importance of editing is to generate data which is accurate, consistent with intent of question and other information in the survey, uniformly entered, complete, and arranged to simplify coding and tabulation. So it is sometimes it becomes obvious that an entry is in the questionnaire is incorrect or enter in the wrong place. So beware, guys. So there is I will name those errors, and the researcher has three choices, of course. So one is the researcher can sometimes detect the proper answer by reviewing the other information in the schedule. And then researcher can contact the respondent for correct information if the identification information has been collected, as well as if time and budget allow. And the last one, researcher strike out the answer if it is clearly inappropriate. Here, an editing entry of no answer or unknown is called for. This procedure, however, is not very useful if your sample size is small, as striking out an answer generates a missing value and often means that the observation cannot be used in the analysis that contain this variable. The second one is coding. So coding involves assigning numbers of other symbols to answer the responses, can be grouped into a limited number of classes or categories. Coding entails the assignment of numerical values to each individual response for each question within the survey. So it is one of the easiest way to develop coding structure for the questionnaire and to develop a code book. So a code book or coding scheme contains each variable in the study and specifies the application of coding rules to the variable. It is used by the researchers or research staff as guide to make data entry less prone to error and more efficient. So it's a good start, right? Coding close-ended questions is much easier as they are structured questions and the responses obtained are predetermined. So next then data entry. Once the questionnaire is coded appropriately, of course there's a sequence between the coding and then next is the data entry. Then the researchers input the data into a statistical software package. Manual data entry or keyboarding remains as a mainstay for researchers who need to create a data file immediately and store it in a minimal space and a variety of media. So we all know that manual data entry is highly error prone when complex data is being entered, and therefore it become necessary to verify data, at least a portion of it. So, as the data is being manually entered in the process, researchers must look for anomalies and go through the editing process. The next one is data cleaning. Data cleaning focuses on error and detection and consistently checks as well as treatment of missing responses. The first step in the data cleaning process is to check if each variable for data that are out of the range as otherwise called logically inconsistent data. So most advanced statistical packages provide an output relating to such inconsistent data. So inconsistent data must be closely examined as sometimes they might not be inconsistent and be representing legitimate response. For example, they gave an table, a short table, contains the student discounts plus student events plus money saving advice equals happy days. Next topic, preliminary data analysis. So in the earlier part of this chapter, we discussed how responses are coded and entered. Creating numerical summaries of this process provides valuable insights into effectiveness. For example, missing data information that is missing about a respondent or case for which other information is present, it may be detected. So miscoded, out of range data, extreme values, and other problems also may be rectified after a preliminary look at the dataset. Once data is cleaned, a researcher can embark on the journey data analysis. In this section, we will focus on the first stage of data analysis, which mostly concerned with the descriptive statistics. So, what we know about descriptive statistics is that the name suggests, describe the characteristics of data as well as provide initial analysis of any violations of assumptions underlying the statistical techniques. So these statistics can be obtained using frequencies, descriptives, or explore command in SPSS. Of course, for analysis purposes, researchers define the primary scales of measurement, the nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio into two categories. So we all know that what I have discussed, or the nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio, alam natin yan sa business accounting natin. So, they are named as categorical variables, na-discuss na natin to, also called as non-metric data, and continuous variable, also called metric data. The nominal and ordinal scale-based variable are called categorical variables such as gender, marital status, and so on, while interval and ratio scale-based variables are called continuous variables such as height, length, distance, temperature, and so on. Next, assessing for normality and outliers. To conduct many advanced statistical techniques, researchers have to assume that data provided is normal, mean it is symmetrical on a bell curve and free of outliers. So, yung bell curve, ayan, na-discuss naman natin sa microeconomics, kaya medyo familiar na rin tayo. In simple terms, if the data was plotted on a bell curve, the highest number of data points will be available in the middle, and the data points will reduce on either side in a proportional fashion as we move away from the middle. The tests of normality and outliers are important if the researcher wishes to know and rectify any anomalies in the data. The last topic that I will discuss is the hypothesis testing. So once the data is cleaned and ready for analysis, researchers generally undertake hypothesis testing. Hypothesis is generally based on some preconceived notion of the relationship between the data derived by the manager or the researcher. So this preconceived notion generally arrive from existing theory or practices observed in the marketplace. So for example, a hypothesis could be that consumption of soft drinks is higher than among young adults pertaining to age group 18 to 25 in comparison to middle-aged consumers pertaining to age group 34 to 45. Alam naman natin na mas malakas talagang uminom ng soft drinks ang mga teenager or yung mga millennials, kaya based din naman sa hypothesis na to, ganun nga yung lumabas. Kasi marami ng na sakit na nararamdaman yung mga medyo mas matatanda na sa atin. So, in the case of above stated hypothesis, we are comparing two groups of consumers and two samples are independent of each other. Generic process for hypothesis testing. So, testing for statistical significance follows a relatively well-defined pattern through authors differ in number and sequence of steps. The number one is formulate hypothesis. So, while developing hypothesis, researchers use two specific terms, the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. The null hypothesis states that there is no difference between phenomena, and alternative hypothesis states that there is true difference between the phenomena. If the null hypothesis is rejected, we accept the alternative hypothesis that there is difference between the drinking of hard and soft drinks among young adult. In the research term, null hypothesis is denoted as 2. Select an appropriate test. Statistical techniques can be classified into two streams, namely unvariate and multivariate. So, univariate techniques are appropriate when there is a single measurement of each element in the sample, or there are several measurements of each element but each variable is analyzed in isolation. The major difference between unvariate and multivariate analysis is the focus of analysis, where univariate analysis is techniques focus on average variances. Multivariate analysis techniques focus on degree of relationships. 3. Select desired level of significance. A difference has statistical significance if there is no good reason believe the difference does not represent random sampling fluctuation. fluctuations only. For example, in the case of first hypothesis we developed relating to the young adults and middle-aged consumers, we found that the young adults consume 21 soft drinks a week, and in the middle-aged people consume 16 soft drinks a week. Can we state there is a meaningful difference between the two groups? To define the meaningfulness, we need to conduct significance testing. Fourth, compute the calculated difference value. After the data are collected, researchers use formula for the appropriate significance test to obtain the calculated value. The fifth, obtain the critical value. Once the test is conducted for t-value or chi-square or the other measure, kasi marami pa namang ibang technique na pwedeng gamitin depende sa kung ano yung data na ibibigay. So the researchers must look up to the critical value in appropriate table for that distribution. The critical value is the criterion that defines the region of rejection from region of acceptance of the null hypothesis. 6. Compare the calculated critical values. Once the calculated and critical values are obtained, the researcher then compares the values. If the calculated value of the test statistics is greater than the critical value of the test statistics, the null hypothesis is rejected. 7. Marketing research interpretation. So the conclusion reached by hypothesis testing must be converted into a language which can be understood by manager. In this way, what was stated as managerial problem gets answers. So yes, we are done. I hope you learned something, and thank you for listening. That's all.
Good day, everyone. My name is Luisa S Muncada from BSB MM21. Today we're going to discuss the conclusion, chapter summary, and the presentation of the result. Now let's get the ball rolling.
Now guys, since the previous reporter already discussed the topic, now let's jump to its conclusion. In this chapter, we discussed 3 aspects of marketing research process: data collection, data preparation, preliminary data analysis. Once the questionnaire is designed to collect primary data, researchers needs to involve field workers. Number 2, once the data is collected using fieldwork, the next stage for the researcher is to edit and code the data. The editing and coding process can be tedious at time, but are important in the data entry process. So, data collection is the process of gathering and measuring information on targeted variables in an established system, which then enables one to answer relevant questions and evaluate outcomes. So, the clean data is then used for analysis purposes by researchers. The first step for analysis is to look for normality and outliers. It is important to do this test as many advanced statistical tests are quite sensitive to extreme values in dataset. So data cleaning is very important because it's a process of fixing or removing incorrect, corrupted, incorrectly formatted, duplicate, or incomplete data within a dataset. When combining multiple data sources, there are many opportunities for data to be duplicated or mislabeled. Next is the chapter summary. One of the important aspects of any research project is to assist managers in decision-making process, and a lot depends on how the researchers communicate the findings of the research project to the managers. If the result of the research are not effectively communicated to the manager, the decision-making process may not be as sound as expected. So it means that it represents the transformation of data into knowledge for decision making. In this context, data refer to raw. Unanalyzed materials information is analyzed data. Knowledge, the subsequent absorption assimilation, and understanding of that information. Also, in this chapter, therefore, we'll focus on how to write a research report which can be easily understood by manager as well as can help in decision-making process as desired. We shall focus on the issue of content, format, layout, and style, and it will also focus on how to write a report in a proper way in order for your manager to understand your report. So next topic is reporting the result, key issues to remember. So the first and foremost rule for writing the report is to emphasize. The researchers must keep in mind that the manager who is going to read and utilize the findings of the research project may not be as technically knowledgeable with statistical techniques or at times with the methodology. So order to simple complex. For example, leading to conclusion or may state conclusion first. The second rule is researchers should keep in mind is related to the structure of the report. The report should be logically structured and easy to follow. The manager should easily be able to grasp the inherent linkages and connection within the report. The write-up should be succinct and to the point. A clear and uniform pattern should be employed. Conclusion should be consistent with study objectives and research question. Right? In order for the manager to keep up with the research study or the report. Furthermore, researcher must make sure that the scientific rigor and objectivity is not lost when presenting the research project findings. At times, because of the heavy involvement of researchers in the overall research process, it is possible that there is a loss of objectivity. So, here, be concise and objective. You will have the opportunity to give your own interpretation of the result in the discussion section. Last but not least is a professional developed report is always well received as it makes the important first impression in manager's mind. It is therefore very important for researchers to focus on the presentation of the report. So, emphasize what is new, different, or important about your result, and also consider the alternative explanation for the results. So that's all for this topic. Now, let's go for the next reporter.
Good day everyone, I'm Kimberly Ann P. Salvarita and I'll be going to discuss the continuation of Muncada's report.
Generic Marketing Research Report. A professional marketing research report must focus on several issues including effective communication of findings to the manager, provide sound and logical recommendation on the basis of the findings, and develop report in a manner that it serves for future reference. Every marketing research report is unique in its own sense. However, many parts of the basic format of any marketing research reports remains generic. Following provides the format for a generic marketing research report. Number 1. Title page. Number 2. Table of contents. Number 3. Executive summary. Number 4. Introduction. Number 5. Research design. Number 6. Data analysis and findings. Number 7. Conclusion and recommendation. Number 8. Limitation and future directions. Number 9. Appendices. Next is what not to do when writing reports. There are several issues the researcher must keep an eye on. When writing a research report, the researcher should make sure that the explanation provided for each aspect of the process. Furthermore, many times it happens so that the researcher, in the zeal to describe the phenomena, goes over the top with regards to explanation and provides too much detail, which disengages the reader. This tends to happen mostly in the analysis part where statistical processes are explained. Sometimes it has also been observed that researchers are too focused on the packaging style and format and not to content and substance. This can affect the quality of the report, credibility of the researcher, and the overall relationship between researcher and manager. Next is report presentation. The presentation has become an integral part of the most marketing research projects. Most managers are finding it hard to read the entire report and so prepare the researcher to present the report in an oral presentation. For any presentation, the most important aspect in preparation, researchers should first develop an outline of the presentation keeping the audience in mind. Once the outline is developed, the researcher should focus on the content management and decide as to what is relevant and important and what is not. Researcher must remember that the research was conducted for assistance in decision making and was not a statistical exercise. Therefore, the focus on the presentation should be on how the research can help managers in making a better informed decisions. The last is the conclusion. It is very important for the researcher to remember that the report is being prepared for the manager and therefore, researcher must empathize with the manager in the writing process. The report must be logically structured and easy to follow. The objectivity of the research is also a supreme concern and researcher should oppose inclusion of any judgment beliefs which cannot be supported. The researcher should make sure that the report is well written and looks professional. Researchers must make sure that they do not over or underemphasize the relevant issues. It is easy to get carried away when developing research project report. The researcher must focus on manager's need and should make sure that the report consistently adheres to it. The same rules apply when preparing report presentation, which also has become an integral part of any research project. That's all. Thank you.